As you may have gathered, I am big into computers now, specifically the Amiga. I absolutely love its graphics and sound capabilities. In my opinion, it is unsurpassed, always has been and will be for a long time yet, in the video, animation, graphics, and sound arena. IBM can come out with Sound Blaster. IBM can come out with VGA. What IBM doesn't realize is the Amiga comes with all that built in. You spend upwards of $1,500 Canadian on an IBM to get all the peripherals and sound cards and graphics cards and whatever cards you want. Okay, to get the CPU you want. Everything. You spend $1,500 to get all that. You spend $500 and you get an Amiga 500 that can do everything a $1,500 IBM can do, and in my opinion, a hell of a lot better. You spend a bit of extra money, get yourself a 24-bit graphics card, and it can easily outdo any IBM for graphics. You spend a little bit of extra money, get some custom chips for your computer. Never mind, full-blown cards. The expansion slots are reserved for things that you really need. Get a few custom chips, put them in there, and you can get sound quality that's as good as live. The Amiga can be turned into a professional sound studio, digital recording studio, if you want. In terms of graphics, it can be turned into a professional production studio. You've seen the Video Toaster. You know what it can do. And the Video Toaster isn't the only thing out there that can do that stuff, you know. There's other hardware and software available for the Amiga that can do those kinds of things, all for considerably less than one would expect from high-end equipment. And the quality is easily comparable to high-end equipment. People are always putting down the Amiga, saying, oh, the Amiga has had its day, the Amiga sucks. Those people should take another look. So in my opinion, these are primarily IBM owners who say this, of course. I'm not saying that you're one of them, just because you use an IBM. I'm not saying all IBM owners are like this, it's just primarily these complaints come from IBM-biased people. People who really don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the Amiga. They just assume that because it's different, that it sucks. No. The IBM is a good computer, the Amiga is a good computer. They are both made for different things, though. That's what people don't seem to realize. See, Commodore made a mistake. When they first brought out the Amiga in 1987 or 1986, whenever it was. I think it was 86. Yeah. No, it was 84. Sorry. Yeah, when they first brought out the Amiga in 1984, they made the mistake of trying to sell it as a business computer, a market which IBM was already firmly established in and had been for quite some time. It is only recently that people have begun to realize what the Amiga is really capable of. The Amiga never sold as a business computer. I think one of the main drawbacks is that they sell Amigas in places like Kmart, and people automatically assume anything sold in Kmart sucks. Well, they sell Commodore 64s in Kmart's. Those were established, excellent computers way back when, you know? Yeah, it's a shame. People really don't know what they're talking about. The Amiga is an excellent computer, and I wish people would realize that. Because it's damaging to the reputation of us Amiga owners, you know? People think, oh, Amiga sucks. Well, I know of very few production studios that I've been in contact with or have heard about that don't use Amigas. Using IBMs in a production studio is absolutely unheard of. Just like using an Amiga for a business network is absolutely unheard of. IBM always has been, and in my opinion always will be, the king of business computers. Whereas the Amiga always has been, and in my opinion always will be, if Commodore sticks to the, you know, keeps up with the times, the granddaddy of multimedia computers. Not many people know this, or are aware of this, but the Amiga is actually a landmark computer. And a lot of the computer developments of today owe their inspiration to the Amiga. Why? I'll explain it to you. Quite simply, the Amiga was the first computer to multitask. Okay, meaning, of course, it can run more than one application at once. For example, when you run a program from the CLI, the command line interface, or DOS, it keeps DOS in check in memory while you're running the program, so that when you exit the program, you'll go immediately back to DOS without having to load it up again. That's multitasking, basically. It can do more than one thing at once. The Video Toaster multitasks as well. But it is currently the only true multitasking computer in the home market. Now, before you go jumping out of your seat and screaming at the TV, let me explain something to you. Let me explain to you how it works, okay? The Amiga CPU is basically think of it as the commander, okay, the boss. I know you know all about CPUs, right? But the Amiga CPU works a little differently. Now, the IBMs use the 86 series. The Amigas use the 68,000 series. The 68,000 series CPUs basically are designed to take the load off of the CPU to speed up operations. Granted, a 68,000 baseline CPU only runs at 7.14 megahertz, which is not very fast in today's 3350 megahertz world. But the way it's designed, it can achieve speed, which is comparable to like a 386 or a 486. And how it does this is basically, as opposed to doing everything itself, you know, as opposed to having all the operations routed through the CPU and having it calculate all the mathematical calculations out and everything, the only function the CPU serves is basically just to assign tasks to the custom chips inside. Like you've got built in, you have a custom chip for animation, custom chip for graphics, for sound, for video output, all this stuff, everything. Everything the Amiga is capable of, it has a separate custom chip or set of chips for that operation. Which is why the IBM requires things like Windows and such, programs that allow it to basically simulate multitasking. Software programs that make multitasking possible. Because it's not built into the hardware. An IBM does not actually do true multitasking. I was actually quite surprised when I found that out, because I always thought it had. But it didn't. I read it in a very reputable magazine, which in an unbiased way compared IBM, Macintosh, and Amiga. And it basically broke down as follows. IBM is primarily a business computer. Amiga is graphics, animation, and sound, whereas the Macintosh is primarily used for desktop publishing. That's what those are best for. Now people say, well, what about VGA? VGA is better than anything the Amiga can do. No, actually it's not. And I'll explain why. The human eye can determine the difference in color gradients, like say a nice smooth gradation from say a flesh tone, right? Like a dark flesh tone to a light flesh tone, right? Nice smooth transition from one to the other, right? No lines in between. 256 colors, if you looked close enough, you would be able to see the difference. The human eye can discern the difference, like the naked eye can discern the difference between gradients up to something like 2 or 3 million colors. You would have to have upwards of 3 million colors on the screen in order to eliminate any discernible difference between color gradients. And the Amiga is capable of that. I know you're thinking, well, what are you talking about? You said it could display 4096 colors and that's it, right? Well, that's true. That's without any cards or anything in it. That's just a baseline Amiga with nothing in it. The most simple, cheapest Amigas are capable of that. How it is able to display more than 3 million colors on the screen at once is via what is called a 24-bit graphics card. It has a 24-bit palette, which is 16.7 million, no, pardon me, 16.8 million colors in its palette, and it selects the optimum, I guess, 3-4 million of them, and displays them, not on the computer screen. The computer screen cannot handle that high resolution. What it does is it outputs it as a video signal. This is for professional applications only currently. I imagine in a few years' time they're going to start developing like games and other software for it. But anyway, how the 24-bit card manages to get that many colors on the screen is it outputs it as a video signal. It does not treat a 24-bit computer-generated frame as a computer graphic. It treats it as a video image. And that's how it's made. It's basically mathematically made into a video image, a full NTSC signal, video signal, and outputted to your VCR, where it's recorded. And that's why, with 24-bit graphics, you will not see a single pixel. They're that good. Basically, they look like still video frames. If you'll give me a minute here, what I'll do is I'll boot up the toaster, and I'll let you take a look at a few 24-bit video frames. Oh, another problem with VGA is there's something about the graphics mode. If you look closely at the screen, you'll notice the pictures appear rather blocky. Like, they're really pretty to look at. They have all these colors on the screen. But they're made up of blocks of pixels, or segments of pixels. That segmentation problem, it's what separates the IBM from the professional video market. Its graphics modes are not high enough. Even Super VGA, which displays over 32,000 colors on the screen at one time, even that's not enough. That's why the Amiga is used for professional video, because it can display all these colors, and the IBM currently has nothing to compare with it at all. Yeah, it's fine and dandy for games, but that's about it. Also, show me a good arcade action game on an IBM. There's a few companies out there, Electronic Arts and Psygnosis in particular, who do really good arcade action games specifically for the Amiga, then they're later transferred over for other computers. From what I've seen, IBM seems to be used mainly for two types of games: flight simulation and fantasy role-playing, or whatever, you know, that type of game. Role-playing games and simulators, with very little emphasis on arcade action. I don't know about you, but I enjoy a good shoot-'em-up every once in a while, you know, relieves tension. I mean, I enjoy the adventure games too. You know, it's good to exercise your mind every once in a while and get into a good story, whatever. But I enjoy blowing things up every once in a while. Granted, there are some arcade games out there, but I've seen different versions of different games on both IBM and Amiga, and I'm sorry. But the Amiga is the best at adapting things like arcade games and so forth. If you want to compare it to like video game systems, the Amiga is comparable to a 16-bit video game system, basically, because it uses 16 bits for its capabilities. It has 8-bit sound, which is the same as a CD player, and 8-bit graphics, which is the same as a 16-bit system. Anyway, I'll load up a couple 24-bit frames just so you can see for yourself, and then we'll get on to something else, shall we? I'm sure all this talk is boring you, but I'm sure you're finding it informative anyway. I'm just trying to explain to you so you'll understand my bias. Like, I am decidedly biased towards the Amiga, and I just thought I would explain in detail exactly why. You know, please don't hold any malice towards me for this. It's just from the facts I've dug up, basically, you know. I mean, I've researched this very thoroughly, and this is what I've come up with. So, you know, there's no offense intended. I mean, I'm not meaning to put down IBM. I mean, it's fine as a home computer, you know. They do gotta work on their sound, though. Sound Blaster's nice, but I'm sorry, that PC speaker has gotta go. I mean, they've got to use the most retarded sound system I've ever heard of. It's like you've got sound coming out of the PC speaker, which is the shits, and you got sound coming out of your sound card, if you even have one. I hope you have a sound card for yours, like a Sound Blaster or there's some FX one or something like that. Anyway, because Ultima 7 has some really nice digitized voices in it, in particular the intro segment. If you've seen it already, then there you go, you know what I'm talking about. If not, well, you might want to spend the $100 on a sound card, you know? Might be worth it. Anyway, talk to you later. Or I'm going to load up those 24-bit frames now. See ya.